So in this section, we're going to look at methods. Again, we've been calling some methods. We're going to look at defining our own methods and how that's set up. So we're going to start looking at a basic method, and then in the next couple units we'll be looking more at methods and passing information into a method and returning information out of a method. But we're going to start with relatively simple methods. So the first method we're going to look at is called print face. It's just a bunch of output statements to print out a face. So let's look at how it is. Now, here it's got declared as public static void print face. So this is the name of the method and parentheses here, and then a curly bracket here. And then that curly bracket matches up with this curly bracket. We then can declare some variables which we can use only within this method. And then we can have some statements, and we'll put lots of different statements inside our methods. And then we have a return statement here, and this marks the end. So when the computer is running along here and gets to the return, it'll quit this method and return back to whatever code called this method. And remember, you call these methods by declaring an object and saying that object.printFace to work with. And so the return method just goes back to whatever called it. Now, the book talks a little bit about this public static void here and how this method works. A little bit about the return statement here. Now, a couple things. Public just means that objects or code outside of this class can use this method. We'll learn more about public and private later on. We'll talk more details about it, but generally our methods will often be public, so that people who create objects can use these methods. The static we will generally avoid. In BlueJ we don't necessarily need that. It's kind of complicated what static does as far as how the code is set up. But when you say static, it sets up that code in a separate spot in memory than the rest of the object. Now, they need it in the textbook version because they're using a main program, and the main program has to be declared static. And so here's print face. They're calling the method here, and since this is static, this also has to be static. But in general, we won't have that complication with BlueJ. So let me jump back over to BlueJ and take a look there. So here's our BlueJ code, and here's print face, the method for print face. So we have our class print face, and here's our method. Our public class is called face printer simple. It's called simple because we'll be looking at a more complicated one in future lessons. So we just say here public void print face. So there's no static here, and this is generally how we will be declaring objects outside of the zyBooks scope. And again, we declare our variable here, and we print out our things. Now, this just prints out a face. So if I run this, it prints out a face. Let's do that. That's me. So if I create a variable of this type here, a new print face object, and then I call the print face method, it will just display the method. Let me bring up the terminal window. I've hidden it at some point. There it is. You have to watch when you minimize the terminal window. Sometimes it's kind of lost for a while. You have to pull it back up manually to see it. Okay, let me clear this and move things around a little bit so we can see. Okay, so now I created a face printer simple object here, and I can run print face and print out the face. So it just prints out that face. And so that's how it does is this method. So again, we say public void, and again we'll talk about this when we use the void. How we do the return in this void will be tied together later on. And then this is the main name of the object, of the method here, and then we'll have our parentheses. And sometimes, again, later on we'll look at putting things inside these parentheses, but not yet. So here's another method. Here's print face B that has similar stuff, different object, different method name that we're going to say. So we can have different methods that do different things. One thing you may be wondering about is why, like here we have a third method, it prints out a face and you can actually see the face. In here they declare the character variable and set it equal to something, and then they use that in our print. So they print out some spaces, then print out the character variable, print out some more spaces, print out the character variable. Seems like a lot of work, but what this does allow us to do is that we can take the same code then and duplicate it down here and just change this one variable to have it print differently. So sometimes when we're programming, when we're coding, we will do some things a little more complicated way, make things a little harder at first, so that then we can reuse them or do that code later on. So if we were to want to print out a lot of different faces with different with different characters in it, we can do it this way. And in fact, this sets us up for a future lesson when we get to parameters this next week. So that's one of the reasons they're setting you up here with this more complicated version of print face. You can also call print face from a main program. So here we have face main, and this is what they're doing in the program. We have a main variable. We declare an object called myFace, and then we call myFace.printFace. So this is a good way of calling it. So doing this, and we've seen this before. So I can just run this main program. I'm going to delete this object and go here. I had to compile this program. It hadn't been compiled, so then I couldn't run main yet. Now I can run main. I just hit the compile button. And I can run the main, and it'll print out another face here. But because we have a main program inside another method that's calling this method, and we're declaring an object, this is a good way of doing this. We're creating an object and then calling the methods through that object in BlueJ. BlueJ is all set up to do that. We don't have to worry so much about this static. So the textbook gets around this by declaring methods as static, and we'll kind of avoid that except for when we're working with a textbook. Okay, go through this. There's some questions about methods and calling methods, and I think you should be able to go through this and answer these. See if you're paying attention to this lesson. Run this program and write your own version of print face B here and call that. So in our main method, we call print face A here. You should also call print face B to print out that face. And I have some examples of different print faces again in this area. So here's print face, the first print face. Here's print face B. So again, if I wanted to, in BlueJ, I could create an object. And I could do a print face and it'll print out this first face. Let me clear these and print out another face. Here's print face B. It prints it out with X's. Ooh, that's a kind of scary looking face. And here's my print face C. It prints out a bigger smiling face. You can write your own print face method here, and then you can run it directly right here, and it'll just show you the face right here. And then there's another challenge activity for printing out a pattern. You just have to print out some stars. So you can try that out. And then a print shape pattern where you just print out a shape and work on it. So that's the basic introduction to these methods that we'll be using, and we'll be talking more about methods in future weeks. Okay, just remember one quick note I forgot to mention. When we're printing these faces out, one thing you may notice is that here I'm printing out a backslash and a thing and a forward slash. Now, printing out things like backslashes and quotes, we mentioned earlier with strings are hard, and they need to be escape characters. So here, if you notice in my code, when I print off the face, most of the characters are just printed off normally, but the backslash has to be backslash backslash, because the backslash character is usually used to denote an escape character. Like if we're printing out a tab, it's backslash T to put in a tab character, a non-printable character. So that also means that to print out a backslash, you have to escape it. So we have to go backslash backslash. So if you were looking at that, that's a neat little thing. And in the next section, we'll look at printing out a double quote, and when we do a double quote, we have to do backslash double quote. Otherwise, otherwise we would end our quote mark. So just remember, like we mentioned last time with strings, that there are some special characters inside strings that have to be treated uniquely.